Hello gamers and welcome to a new formatted Should You Summon video. Today I wanted to go over both of the units in Zenless Zero that are coming out in the version 1.3 update, whether or not I should pull on them. I'll give you my thoughts and all that stuff, and I also have a new way of doing this because I thought I should introduce a little more clarity, and also it might be a little more helpful for you to understand. So I've written up a little like tiering score loosely based on the IGN list. Now some people will be like, what the fuck? Like they'll just be like, ain't no way. But it's mainly just to give you like an idea, right? So the simple idea is I'm going to give each character a score, right? That is going to say how much I think you should pull for them, right? Pretty simple. It's just giving them a ranking, an initial ranking. That's about it, right? You can see the reasons on here. They're very rough. I honestly, anything below 5, it doesn't really matter because one, a unit shouldn't be below 5, and two, if they are, that's bad. Okay. Everything above that is what's important, and you're going to see this 11 out of 10 must pull. This should never be used unless your name is Ruan Mei. But it should never be used. So we'll see if I can stick to that. But yeah, let's get into this. So starting off with, I don't want to butcher her name because this is basically the Gold Demon try not to say the name wrong challenge. Wait, no, it's Yanagi. That's how they pronounce it. So I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly. Yanagi. For Yanagi, to be honest, this one might sound rough because I will say this is my preferred character, the one that I'm definitely more interested in. I'm going to give her a pull score of 7 out of 10. Now, the reason for this is entirely because she is Anomaly, right? Now, let me explain. Her being Electric Anomaly already inherently restricts her team combos and what she's able to do based on the fact that, well, she is Anomaly, right? Anomaly characters often, unless they're Jane Doe, want to be paired with other anomalies to proc disorder to get their main damage off. And especially with Yanagi here, they specifically stated that she is meant for disorder, right? If you watch the live stream, they talk about how she's a disorder character and how she is going to force proc disorder. Now, what I mean by that? Well, basically the whole shtick of this unit is that she has some way in her kit via her enhanced attacks from her, stance switch and her ultimate to force proc disorder procs. Now, it's not the full disorder, right? Her like forced disorder proc is only going to do damage based on the current active anomaly, right? And it's not going to remove it. So you're going to have some unique gameplay in regard that's kind of like Jane Doe, where you're going to have like full uptime on like the buffs and try to do as much like, crit fizz damage as possible. But with Yanagi here, it's going to be disorder damage, right? And so the way to do that is by having full uptime on some sort of dot disorder on the, enemy, right? Now, first off, that's the main problem with it. It's how disorder works, right? So in case you don't actually know how disorder works, disorder is going to be a ratio of the character's attack based on the base damage, like scalar, for that disorder, right? And just to sort of give you like information here, right? You can see the numbers right here on screen that I have pulled up of the different disorders. You have burn disorder, shock disorder, corruption disorder, freeze disorder, assault disorder, right? Now the problem with this is that freeze and assault disorder are bad. In case you don't know, you couldn't really do the math. The percent gain that you get for these two are incredibly bad. So this inherently makes her worse with fire and ice characters. Or sorry, not fire, ice. It's physical and ice characters because the base damage for disorder is incredibly low, right? Now she does have disorder buffs in her kit, right? She's going to buff disorder by X%, or but it's the base number, right? So you're just gonna see this number right here, add like whatever percent is to it, right? So it's gonna increase the base damage of the disorder, but these are still bad when you compare it to shock, burn, or corruption, right? Now, granted, we don't have a ether anomaly character yet, which we really should get one in the future, right? This would be a buff to Bernice, right? To Yanagi, to possibly Jane Doe, depending on what they do, right? We'll see. As most people know, Jane Doe is can be both. She can be disorder or like hyper carry for her own teams, right? Which gives her some flexibility. But as you can see here, if we just do some quick maths over the thing, if we were to pair Yanagi with a fire character, it's going to be like the 10 seconds divided by the 0.5, right? We're going to get 20, and you're going to times this by the 62.5, and you're going to get this number, and then you're going to add the 450 to this, right? So you're going to get this massive anomaly multiplier for your raw damage, right? If you compare this to the full damage of freeze or ice, right? It's just first of all, let me do it right. It's this times 7.5, right? Plus 45, right? You can see how big the difference is if you use her with a ice or physical character. Now, granted, there's going to be some nuance to this, right? You're not always going to have the max duration for any of these. It's very rare, if not impossible, to get the max duration because it starts ticking immediately as the anomaly procs. So both numbers will be lower, but that's the thing. This one's going to be even lower, right? And this is the main reason why you don't see, or ideally you wouldn't run Yanagi with ice or physical character, is because of how low the disorder damage is going to be. Because if there is physical like daze, like the daze, but the assault, that's what it's called, or flinch, right? The flinch effect. If the flinch effect is on the enemy target, then your disorder damage that Yanagi is going to do is going to plummet because it's not one of the dot elements, being, you know, ether, electric, or burn, right? So you really ideally don't want to use her with that. Now, they could cook up with a future anomaly character of those, you know, bad, or I would say bad elements, to have her do more damage when paired with it, right? If they, you know, do some like funny stuff with their kit, or like add dot to it, because if you add dot to it, well, now you're scaling off two different disorders basically. So again, there's maybe some ways to cook, but right now, the way she is, or at least how disorder is designed, you are inherently limited based on the elements you want to use with her, and, you know, the characters that we have right now with the small roster and all that stuff, right? And if you were to do this, your disorder damage would also flip-flop between whichever element is active. So like it's not really ideal, right? So again, there's a lot of reasons to this. And again, there's like a bunch of separate videos already covering how disorder works, how you know, anomalies work. I would suggest looking at those. But the point is with this is that with Yanagi specifically, she lacks synergy with a bunch of units because of her element and the way she wants to run things, right? And wanting another dot anomaly type character, right? I will say though, she does have unique gameplay in that regard. I think it's pretty cool, at least visually. Like if you looked at live stream gameplay, that's really cool. And she does actually make use of older units, right? Which is where I was going to next. What exactly are those older units? Well, it's going to be Grace, Seth, if you already have him, and Rena, right? And then possibly Qingyi if you do some like really funny stuff. Or, you know, like I wouldn't use her with Anton. Ambi is technically possible, but again, it's not something I'd really use her with. But it does make use of these older units. Now, why does she make use of these older units? Well, the main thing that we're going to look at here is Rena. Rena actually has this thing that is shock duration increase by 3 seconds, and they everybody does 10% more shock damage when enemies are shocked, right? So this is the good thing, because with Yanagi, there's two ways to run her. There's the run her as a disorder carry with different elements, or you can run her on a mono team where she's forcing her own disorder damage. Now, there's going to be some damage loss because the other characters are going to do build up, which is why it's kind of bad to run. I wouldn't say bad, but there is some downsides of running characters like Rena and Seth, because if they have lower stats, then your disorder damage is going to go down, and so Yanagi's going to do less damage. But even so, with Rena on the team, you get a shock duration increase. In case you weren't paying attention, the reason why this matters is because getting a shock duration increase is a increase the base, you know, multiplier of your shock, right? As you may have seen in my math example here, you're going to get a massive increase to the actual shock damage, or sorry, shock disorder if you run Rena, right? You're going to get a, you know, 100, no, it's 375, right? I'll just do it real quickly to show you. It's going to be 375 on top of the current disorder multiplier, which for shock is going to be, it's 10 times 125, right? Plus 450. And so you're going to add in another 375. And so your disorder damage, if you were to proc disorder, would be this, right? This would be the scalar that your disorder is going off of, 2000% of your attack, right? And so running Rena with Yanagi is actually a good thing, because you're going to get that base increase. And so her disorder damage, or her forced disorder proc, is going to do more damage, right? And so there's some benefit there. Rina is finally actually going to get use, right? The main reason she's not used right now is because her buffs are just worse than every other support character, and her uptime isn't that good until you get M1, right? But there's going to see some synergy there. You're going to get synergy with Seth because Seth is also an anomaly support. And so, of course, you can do a mono team with Seth, Rina, then Yanagi, and do a bunch of just force disorders off of her, right? Seth is going to buff the anomaly mastery by 100 on his max core skill, all that good stuff, right? And so you're going to get some decent use out of these old units. You can even somehow, some way, get characters like Ching Yi to work by having her stun, and then you do more damage while they're stunned, right? Even though she might eat up some of your anomaly procs, you just have to be careful about how you build your characters to avoid stuff like that. You can also, again, have like Grace, so you can have instant anomaly buildup, and then have Yanagi just quick swap onto the field and do a bunch of damage. So there's going to be some combos that you can do there with older units that are going to allow you to get it off, right? And the main thing here is the fact that she's going to work really well with Bernice, right? With Bernice being an off-field anomaly character, Yanagi being an on-field anomaly character, you're going to get a lot of synergy between the two, and it's going to work really well. And arguably, I'd say that's her best team, Yanagi, Bernice, and Caesar, or Yanagi, Bernice, and Lucy, right? One of those two, it's going to be whichever one you prefer. Both Lucy and Caesar would be very good in that comp. Caesar's going to be arguably a bit better because you can stun faster, and being off element means you don't ruin any of your anomaly procs in that team. But it's here nor there. Lucy in a good build won't ruin it anyways. So yeah, there's going to be some great options there. And again, I do think Yanagi's going to be really strong. I do think she's going to be up there. Probably not as good as Jane Doe, but we'll have to see and actually use her to figure that out. But I do think she's actually going to be really good. It's just right now, based on how she is functioning, based on the live stream, all the information that we have currently, she is pretty limited with the fact that, well, you don't want to use her with Jane Doe because they're both, carries. And then that means you also don't use her Piper, which just leaves the two other anomaly characters. And when you also consider how anomaly characters function, you're excluding ice and physical because unless they've got something funny like Jane Doe, they inherently aren't that good together because you're trying to proc disorder damage, right? So that's going to limit you there. And then past that, we don't even have ether characters, right? So while I do think Yanagi is going to be very strong, she is pretty niche and realistically has two teams. You have your disorder and you have your mono team, right? Your mono team where it's going to be Rina, Seth, right? And your, actual disorder team where it's going to be Bernice plus Yanagi, right? So it's going to be like this until we get more anomaly characters. I would definitely look out for a corruption anomaly character because that could be a buff to both Yanagi, Jane Doe, and Bernice, right? It could be very helpful for all these characters and Piper and Grace, right? So we'll have to see what happens there. But as of right now, unfortunately, I'd have to give her a 7 because I do feel like she is a niche pull that is not insanely impressive on their own, but is great under ideal conditions and a certain setup, right? So yeah, again, it's not, this wasn't made for her. I did this for actually Caesar and Bernice, where I gave Bernice a 7 and a Caesar a 9, right? Because I feel like Caesar is way more overall impactful to the actual game. But unfortunately, life is what it is. I didn't put up that video, right? So yeah. Anywho, right? Tell me your thoughts about that one down below, whether or not you agree. I could see putting her up to an 8 because she does make use of those older units that you might have lost 50-50 to, for like Rina, for example. So you could get some use out of there and it still be a decent team. But like, I just think she's too niche right now to really be like, oh, hey, I would recommend pulling this character, right? So that's why I gave her a 7, right? As for Lighter, because I've already yapped for like 15 minutes about Yanagi, Lighter, I'm actually going to give an 8, despite the fact that he's also incredibly niche, right? Now, the reason why I'm giving him an 8 is because him being a stunner inherently makes him useful, right? Whenever you start this game out, you only have one stunner, with that being Ambi, and so you either have to have summoned for someone like Chingy or Caesar, or have lost 50-50 to Vaughn or Kaleda, right? Now, here's the thing. They said that he is providing buffs for ice and fire. And they specified that intentionally because he only buffs ice and fire. Now, that's the main problem with him, right? So, as you can see here, the pro fire and ice support. He's a stunner. He can be a replacement for Vaughn and a buff to Soldier 11. And he also could be future investment for those fire and ice types. You want to know the problem? There is only one crit DPS for both fire and ice. This is the thing with these two units. They made a hyper niche stunner that buffs 2 units in the game right now. Granted, the roster is small. We don't have that many characters, but Lighter is a stunner after Vaughn, after Chingy, after Caesar, who buffs 2 elements specifically, and they have 1 of each, which is, it's just funny. Now, clearly, this is supposed to be some use of Miyabi, because we know Miyabi is ice, or Miyabi is ice, right? So clearly, there's supposed to be something there, but him exclusively buffing fire and ice is just kind of funny, because in the live stream, you can even see it. They did use him with these teams. They used him with Soldier 11. They actually used him with Bernice on like a mono fire build. I don't know about that one. I did talk about Bernice crit build in my previous videos. I've even had a few people say it's pretty good. So who knows? Maybe you could use him with Bernice, Lucy, and actually do a crit build, 100%, right? But using him with Ellen and Soldier 11 seems to be the way they want to go, right? Well, that's super fucking niche, right? You only buffing 2, maybe 3 characters is insane and makes it a more questionable pull. Granted, I don't think he'll be bad. He's also a stunner, right? And these are 2 very popular characters. A lot of people summoned for Ellen. She was a launch character, and so maybe you want to pull a buff for him, assuming his buffs outdo whatever Lycan does, right? Lycan has pretty powerful buffs with his 35% stun multiplier and 25% red shred, so we'll see. Those are very strong buffs whenever you stack them with Ellen. And again, his stun multiplier is universal. So we'll have to see how he stacks up to Vaughn, right? He's got some tough competition, but like, I don't know. And of course, I've already said he lacks synergy of units, right? So with Lighter, there isn't really much to talk about besides the fact that he is competing with his own archetype, because you have universal stunners like Qingyi and Vaughn, who can sort of be a universal stunner, and you have our 2 lackluster stunners of Kaleda and Ambi. Now, Kaleda does have synergy with Ben that you can do to get off some good damage, so there is going to be a bit, some of that there, and Ambi is just a very good, consistent, fast stunner, right? What he needs to do is have buffs that are super strong specifically for those elements, since that is what they're doing. But ideally, it beats out Vaughn, right? Because you're summoning for a premium character, you're going to want them to do premium things, right? And so inside of Fire, right, there really isn't competition, but for Vaughn, there is going to be some competition. And so that's really all there is for Lighter, is that he's facing tough competition with these other stunners, because realistically, you can just run Qingyi with either one of them. You can run Qingyi with Soldier 11, you can run Qingyi with Ellen, right, and still get a very competitive scores and do like really high damage because of her 80% stun multiplier, right? They made it super high because she needs to do a lot of buffs, right? Now, again, without having full access to Lighter's kit, it's really hard to say. He seems even more niche than Yanagi, which you may be like giving me a question mark, because you're like, well, then why does he have a higher score? It's purely based on the fact that he's a stunner, right? It's purely based on the fact he's a stunner, because one of the things you want in this game is a stunner, right? Most teams run a stunner. You really want to stun the enemy to do your max damage to prevent them from attacking, so you can pop off to your DPS, all this stuff, right? So stunners are core to the game. You start the game off with 1. Stunner inherently has more value. Of course, this score, I would say, goes down if you already have a stunner. If you already have a stunner, you can argue him, to be honest, you can argue him probably a 6 out of 10 if you already have a stunner. Because here's the thing, if you already have Caesar, if you already have Vaughn, if you already have Qingyi, why would you want Lighter if he's not even going to buff the characters you use, because he's only fire and ice? Or why would you want Lighter because he's not a significant upgrade over them, or so on and so on, right? So you can argue totally that his score should be lower if you already have a stunner, right? I'm just gonna write this down. Right, so I do think he has some pretty high value, but if you already have a stunner, hard sell for him, to be honest, right? That's what I would say. So yeah, that's basically going to be my thoughts. I would like to see I would like to see how these units play out in the future with other characters coming out, because again, we're missing a lot of character types, right? If you just were to go through it, there's no physical stunner, no physical support, right? Caesar technically is a physical support, but you get what I'm saying, right? There's a bunch of character types that we're just straight up missing that we don't have, like a ice anomaly, right? Or ice defense character, right? Whatever it may be. Same thing with electric, where we have got one of each, right? With Ether, we're missing a whole set of characters, right? Anomaly, stun, defense, right? So there's going to be room for growth on both of these characters. However, right now, at least in my opinion, their pull value looks really low, right? And so that's what I just want to talk about in this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe to me on Twitch. Tell me your thoughts down below, whether you agree, disagree, your opinion on all this matter. Did I score either one of them too low, or did I give it too high? Because at the end of the day, I do think both are good characters, right? Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I think they're good. They're going to be meta, right? And this isn't because the massive gap between standard characters and limited characters, which there is, right? But like, I just, like, within their one team that they basically, well, I guess two teams that they basically both have, right? They both have like two teams realistically. They're going to be really strong, right? And Lighter is going to have potentially future investment for the fact that he is buffing Ice and Fire, right? If we get more Ice and Fire characters, it'll be good for them, right? Unless, of course, his buffs are exclusively crit, which I believe they are. So you might lose out a little bit there on some of the buffing if he is buffing specifically crit types. So yeah, it's really here nor there, right? And so yeah, that's gonna be it for the video. Good luck on your pulls if you are pulling, right? I may pull Yanagi because I do think she's cool. Her gameplay looks super fun. And yeah, it's gonna be the video. See ya.